Welcome to robots.txt. I'm Ben Lefebvre and I'm joined today by Gary from Google. Hi Gary, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Ben.
I've got a question for you. In terms of mobile websites and responsive design, is that very different to Google? How do you tackle that? Is it better to go for a responsive design because in that case you don't have to create something completely different and everything in terms of, as a company and everything might be easier? Or how does it work?
We were recommending responsive web design because that worked for us in general. We like the simplicity in responsive web design, the simplicity that you have one content to update and to keep up to date instead of two versions, so that was great. But other than that, other than the fact that we liked it, there's no stronger recommendation.
Okay.
We think that it will be simpler for you if you implement responsive web design, but you don't have to go with that way.
Okay.
Like if you create a separate site or if you do user region sniffing and then you do dynamic serving, that's also perfectly fine. In our documentation, we actually discuss all three. You don't get any benefit for going responsive, for example.
Okay.
The thing is that you want to have a mobile website, and we really don't care how you do that.
Okay, and I guess it goes the other way around as well. If you already have a mobile website, it's fine. You can just leave it as a mobile website, and you don't need to have to work around the mobile-friendly website from your desktop.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's fine. Cool. Okay. In terms of mobile-friendly sites, are there any common problems or technical issues that can actually make something like a kind of a problem in terms of ranking?
Yeah. So I think the most common or the biggest problem that we see is that people robot out resources.
Okay.
That we announced in May, I think, or in April, that we are now rendering all the pages on the internet, or every piece of content that we crawl, we will actually render. For rendering the pages, we actually need to do the same thing that a browser would do. And the browsers do an initial fetch for the HTML, and then they do fetches for other resources such as CSS or JavaScript and images.
Okay.
And once it fetched all the resources, then it builds the final page. That's how browsers create. I mean, it's oversimplified, but that's how browsers create the picture that you see in picture, the page that you see, the final page. And Google does the same thing. Our renderer will first get the initial copy from, or initial version from Googlebot. That's the base HTML. And then it will try to fetch the additional resources. If any of those resources are roboted, then Googlebot can't fetch them.
Okay.
And if Googlebot can't fetch them, then we can't use it in rendering. And if we can't use it in rendering, then it's likely we will misunderstand the page. So, for example, even if your site is mobile friendly, but you are roboting out the resources that actually transform the page into a mobile friendly layout, that will be a problem for Googlebot, and we might not see it as mobile friendly. So I think the roboted resources, that's the biggest problem that we face and the biggest problem that we are trying to tackle.
Usually when you have a look on your mobile website, you've got less text on there and you've got more images and these kind of things. Are there any key elements you would recommend to have a look at, or in terms of, to make sure that you've got those kind of key elements on your mobile, your responsive design or your mobile website?
Yeah, not really, actually.
Yeah, not really.
I think the problem, well, it's not a problem, but on mobile you have less real estate, right? So you have to make sure that the user with low attention span will understand what the page is about and what your product is about and what you're offering, pretty much. On a desktop computer, you have a crap ton of pixels to work with. On mobile, you don't have that. So basically, you want to somehow take your desktop content and condense it into something that can be consumed on a mobile interface. Of course, this is not applicable for every situation. For example, if you're a news site, then you probably don't want to shorten your articles and just have the lead paragraph, because that wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah, okay.
But in case of a locksmith, they could, I imagine, do something like, we are a locksmith, we are operating in this area, call us here.
Okay, yeah. So you've got all the elements and everything you need.
Yes.
Okay, no, I see what you mean. In terms of, like, let's say we've got some companies, whether they are big or small or anything like that, and they just can't go responsive right now for some reasons. It could be like money. It could be just because it just takes time for them to actually get responsive. What would you give them as an advice? Like, should they just go for some part of the website to be responsive? Should they have like a microsite, for example? What should they do?
It's interesting you asked this. First, I've seen that big companies actually go mobile friendly much harder than, for example, small businesses. I don't have the exact numbers, but if I remember correctly, then we've seen that the vast majority of those sites that are not mobile friendly are actually big sites, not small businesses. Actually, I had a chat with a guy who asked me a similar question, and he said that before April 21st, they could not invest in transforming the whole site in mobile friendly, but they had to take like 200 pages and make those mobile friendly, and if that's okay, I think it's perfectly fine. I mean, if you can identify the most important pages that you want to rank for, and you surely don't want to, or you want to rank for regardless of the device, then that's a decent approach. I wouldn't recommend it for everyone to do this. I think in general you want to go mobile friendly with the whole site. But if that's not possible, sure.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, going with 200 pages, that's also perfectly acceptable.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Gary.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.